This is a Dynamite Network podcast.
Hey everyone, Marvelous Joe here at the top of the episode. With the approaching holiday season, we're officially underway with this year's holiday charity drive and lead up to our charity duel episode in a few weeks, which is going to be Alfred Pennyworth versus Edwin Jarvis. This year, all donations will be going once again to Pop Culture Classroom, a non-profit organization that delivers educational resources to school districts, teachers, and community organizations using comics, graphic novels, and related pop culture media. Their mission is to inspire a love of learning, increase literacy, and build community through the tools of popular culture and the power of self-expression. To donate, visit our official store through dynamicduel.com, where you'll find two donation options. One if you're Team DC and one if you're Team Marvel. Or you could go directly to dynamicduel.com/donatedc, one word, or dynamicduel.com/donatemarvel, which are linked in our show notes. We're making the charity drive a competitive duel this year, except the only stat is which side can donate the most. Everyone who donates will receive a digital poster featuring original art of Alfred and Jarvis drawn New Yorker style by Johnny DC. One lucky random donor will win a framed print of the Alfred vs. Jarvis art that we'll announce during that December duel episode. Which fan base is the most charitable? Right now, Marvel is still ahead with 4 more donations than DC, so Marvel guys, let's keep it going. DC guys, y'all are a bunch of slackers. I said it. On with the show. Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we're going to review Season 4 of the Max series Doom Patrol, which ended actually a few weeks ago, but we're just getting to the review now. It was a fantastic season. I mean, not the best probably, but the show is just so good.
I don't know if I would say it's my favorite DC show now that Sandman has been made, but it's definitely up there, and this season did not disappoint.
We'll talk all about Season 4 later on this episode. Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news to come out this past week, of which we just have one news item, and that is the official trailer 2 for the Suicide Squad ISEKAI animated series.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. As our listeners may know, our duel simulator is so advanced that it's gained sentience, and has named itself the artificial life form for running extensive duels, just a rather very intelligent simulator 9000, or Alfred Jarvis 9000. He has a quick message for our listeners, so listen up.
Why, hello there. Do you love listening and chatting about Marvel and DC? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier lets you listen to this podcast without ads and gives you access to its Discord chat group, where you can chat with Johnny DC and Marvelous Joe. The Fantastic 4 tier gives you that and more, with 2 bonus episodes each month, including bloopers and top 10 shows where Johnny and Joe count down your favourite Marvel and DC subjects. The X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of Dynamic Duel, where every month you help the host choose what to review and who to fight against each other. And finally, the Dynamite Podcast Network tier allows aspiring podcasters to create their own battle-focused show using this Monte Carlo simulator. Johnny and Joe will help you develop your show, provide graphic support and consultation, and get you simulation results to announce on your show. Pitch the twins your show via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by reaching out to them on social media. Check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks AJ9K, and thanks to everyone who supports the podcast. Be sure to tune into the Max Destruction podcast, part of the Dynamite Podcast Network, this Wednesday, where hosts Ken and Dustyn are going to pit Kevin McAllister from Home Alone against Jigsaw from the Saw film series.
Can't wait for that one.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yes, Senjo World is currently on break right now for the month of December, but definitely check out that podcast if you want to find out who'd win between your favorite anime characters. And just released yesterday was the newest show in the Dynamite Podcast Network called Console Combat, in which hosts John and Dean find out who would win in fights between your favorite video game characters. That means right now you can listen to their initial release of episodes, including Nathan Drake from Uncharted versus Tomb Raider's Lara Croft, Hitman's Agent 47 versus Ezio Auditore from Assassin's Creed, and Gino from Super Mario RPG versus Ness from Earthbound. Visit dynamicpodcast.com or click the link in our show notes to listen to all the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network. But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize! A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram and in our email newsletter for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week, we asked, if Brainiac is the villain in Superman Legacy, who would you cast as the character and why?
We got a lot of great answers for this one. It seems like you guys were really excited to cast a potential villain for the new DCU. So let's go ahead and run down our honorable mentions as well as the No Prize winner.
Our first honorable mention goes to Miggy Matanguihan, who said,
"Hey, what's up, guys? It's Miggy, and I would cast Mads Mikkelsen as Brainiac. Imagine the zeal of the first Doctor Strange villain, the intelligence of the banker from Casino Royale, and the poise and evil of Hannibal Lecter. And I think that would be a perfect Brainiac villain. He's also done a bunch of these like tentpole blockbuster movies, so he would have no trouble doing it. All right, thanks, guys."
Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen is a fantastic actor. As many of you know, he was Caecilius in the first Doctor Strange film, but he has yet to play a role in DC, to my knowledge. And I think he'd make a fantastic Brainiac, for sure.
Yeah, the guy does a lot of villain roles, but luckily he's a good actor, so they all feel somewhat different, and I think he could bring actually quite a bit to the role of Brainiac. So I agree, great answer. Our next honorable mention goes to Jacob Bell, who said,
"What's up, guys? Jacob Bell here. I'm going to go with Oscar Isaac for the role of Brainiac. I think that we know how he can act. We know he's a great actor. We know that he has the look. I think his look would be perfect for Brainiac in particular. I know that X-Men Apocalypse wasn't a great movie, but we know that he has that in him, and I think a second chance would be awesome. And I think this role in particular, Brainiac, would be perfect for that. So I'm going to go with Oscar Isaac.
When I first heard Jacob Bell's answer of Oscar Isaac, I was like, that guy's like in everything. Hasn't that guy already played a DC role? And no, he's played 3 different Marvel roles. He's in the MCU as Moon Knight. He was in the Fox X-Men universe as Apocalypse, and he's in the Sony Spider-Man universe as Spider-Man 2099. But he has yet to do a DC role.
Yeah, I agree. He might be a little overexposed right now, but if I heard the news that he was cast as Brainiac, I wouldn't hate it, to be honest, because I think he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah, I go back to his villain role in Ex Machina.
Oh, yeah.
I think just take that role and apply it to the character of Brainiac, that like cold calculating persona. I think that'd be fantastic. It'd be perfect.
For sure.
Great answer, Jacob. Our next honorable mention goes to Lizzie Dyer Arney, who said,
"Hey, it's Lizzie. Definitely inspired by Invincible for this week's question of the week. I think Zachary Quinto would make an excellent Brainiac. He's a good villain, and he can play a great character without emotion, as we've seen in Robot and Invincible, and as Mr. Spock. Also, he can nail the monotone voice that is needed to play Brainiac. He'd be great in the DC universe."
So yeah, when I think of robotic actors, Zachary Quinto is definitely one of the few that comes to mind first. His turn as Spock was fantastic. Also, his villainous role in the Heroes TV show has also sold me on this answer. I think he would be great in the role.
Yeah, plus, I don't know, for some reason, Zachary Quinto just seems like a DC type of guy. Like, he seems like he'd fit well into that universe of characters. Maybe because I'm associating his co-star Chris Pine with the Wonder Woman movies, but still, I think, yeah, Zachary Quinto would be fantastic in the role. Before we reveal the No Prize winner, we want to give a quick shout out to Brandon Estergard, Jose Marcial, Luke Tucker, Scott Camacho, and Travis Herndon for calling in and leaving their answers. You guys all gave great answers. There was no wrong answer there. But the winner of this week's No Prize is Andrew Schunk, who said,
"Hey guys, Andrew Schunk here. The person who I think should play Brainiac is Damian Lewis. His acting in the movie Dreamcatcher was awesome. His acting in Homeland and the show billions. He can play a very smart character and is very cunning and has an evil side. So I think he'd be an excellent Brainiac.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a household name Damian Lewis is. I think if you Google him, you'll certainly recognize his face. But he is the lead actor on the Homeland series, and he's won a ton of accolades over the years and has really been poised to break out on the film scene. I think he has the look for the character. I think he looks hyper intelligent and sinister. He would just absolutely shine in a Brainiac role.
Yeah, he was not my first choice for the role, but now that Andrew Schunk has given this answer, I have a hard time thinking of someone who could do the job better. You're right, he's not a household name, but I think he absolutely has above and beyond what it takes for the role. If he was cast tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, that's freaking perfect. Awesome. More perfect casting for this movie.
So congrats to Andrew Schunk for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news. Okay, so last week we got our first full trailer for the animated series Suicide Squad Isekai. I had forgotten that this was a series. I was thinking this was a movie for some reason, so that was a nice surprise. Animes are known for their lengthy series. I'm not sure how long this one is going to run, but it looks like it's going to be pretty damn cool, so hopefully if it's good, a long time. Of course, Isekai is a specific anime subgenre where the main character or characters travel to a foreign land or a new world. In this case, it looks like the Suicide Squad is traveling to a Japanese mythical fantasy world, which is interesting. I never quite envisioned those characters in that specific setting.
Yeah, it seems like it's just part of a plan by Amanda Waller. Like, she wants to send the squad there for some reason. I'm sure that'll be a mystery. But the characters that are in this series look pretty badass, including Harley Quinn, Joker, Peacemaker, Clayface, Deadshot, and King Shark.
Clayface was a huge surprise for me. Of course, he's a pretty prevalent character in the Harley Quinn animated series, as is King Shark, also in this series. I'm really curious to learn more about why they chose the specific characters that they did.
It's really interesting to see how these characters play into the Japanese archetypes. You know, seeing King Shark as like the big dumb brute is actually really satisfying when he's in anime mode. And same thing goes for the gun-toting badass that is Deadshot. And Harley Quinn, who's like, you know, the manic pixie girl here. And that's what she always is, but it just feels fresh when you see it in the anime style.
Yeah, it's a hella cool style. The voice work in the trailer is Japanese, and it's, you know, pretty good voice work. I tend to be more of a fan of the subs over the dubs, and we'll see if they have both as an offering. We have no idea how we're going to be able to watch this yet, whether it's going to be available on iTunes or maybe even Max or another streaming platform.
Crunchyroll, maybe?
Maybe. That'd be cool for anime fans if it was. But sad for me, because it's another platform for me to subscribe to review this, because I want to review the hell out of this. I loved Batman Ninja.
Yeah, the recent animated series, My Adventures with Superman, was heavily inspired by the anime style as well. And that was great.
I've yet to come across anything DC and anime that isn't awesome. So hopefully this will be as well. Still not sure how everything is going to work out in this fantasy land, but that brings us to our question of the week. What is your favorite alternate universe / dimension for Marvel or DC?
Yeah, there's a ton of them out there. For Marvel, like off the top of my head, there's like, you know, the Microverse, Kunlun, the Astral Plane, places like that, you know?
And of course, DC with the multiverse, you have Earth 2, 3, 4, on and on and on. But you also have places like Azeroth and Gemworld, the Phantom Zone. Let us know what your favorite is.
Yeah, record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram and our email newsletter. Be sure to answer before December 9th. But I think that does it for all the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and get into the main event where we review Season 4 of the DC Max series, Doom Patrol.
Okay, so the Doom Patrol concluded its fourth and final season last month. Despite originating on the now defunct DC Universe streaming app, the show survived a transition to HBO Max, finishing up on the platform now simply known as Max, all while maintaining its dark, absurdist, laugh-out-loud funny yet introspective tone. It's been consistently good in its past seasons, a show that I've recommended highly to anyone who will listen, and this final season, in my opinion, was a worthwhile conclusion to an emotionally beautiful show, albeit one that also defies the action-focused tropes of the superhero genre.
Yeah, if you're looking for an action superhero television show, this is not it. If you're looking for weirdness, humor, and just saying what the fuck a lot, this is the show for you.
It's a little bit more of a mellow, live-action version of the Harley Quinn show.
Sure, yeah.
But better, I think.
It's more of a character study than an action series.
Absolutely. Since we'll be talking about how the series ends, make sure you watch the series, including the entire fourth season, before listening further, because we will be going into spoilers.
And the way these character stories ends is just so beautiful, you don't want to ruin it for yourself. Be sure to absolutely watch season 4 before listening to this review.
Now, if you haven't finished the show, I totally get it. The release schedule for this fourth season was as absurd as the show itself, with the first episode of the season debuting in early December of last year, 2022, and the series ending almost 1 year later. I really like this show, but I didn't even start watching season 4 until they started releasing the second half of it in October. It's like, as HBO Max transitioned to Max, they forgot about Doom Patrol on the shuffle, which is super discouraging as a fan of the series, and I feel like there has been little to no talk about it because people simply forgot about it. With superhero fatigue maybe unofficially setting in this year, it's especially bad for a show as good as Doom Patrol to be overlooked or dismissed, though with this review coming out almost a month late, I guess we're as guilty as anyone for diminishing the importance of the show.
Yeah, I blame you on that one. We should have reviewed this like a month ago.
Well, there's so much that came out and there's so much to talk about. I don't know. Apologies to anyone who's a major fan who's been waiting for this review. Because it's an important show. I think it's, so unique to the genre and more perhaps intellectual or at least psychological than really anything else out there right now from DC or Marvel. I mean, sure, the show has zombie butts, but the show also makes you question the humanity of the butt race.
Yeah, the butts are creatures that have shown up since season 1 of Doom Patrol, and I was hesitant watching the trailers for this season, seeing them and feeling that they had kind of overstayed their welcome by this point, like the gag had kind of run its course, and I feel that about a lot of the jokes within the show, like the what the fuck thing was just so overblown, but as the season progressed, I think they made brilliant use of all their long-running jokes.
Yeah, some of them become definitely eye-roll worthy, as we're now in season 4, but I gotta say, I'm gonna miss them. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. The show holds kind of a special place in my heart, even as a Marvel fan, just for its uniqueness, quirky. There's really nothing else like it, and I'll miss it. And I thought Loki season 2 went out with a bang. This is one of the most emotional, powerful endings to a superhero television show, nay, any television show that I think has ever been made.
I will agree. I think they went out with an absolute bang. And I think they went out at just the right time as well. I think 4 seasons is probably good for a series, especially one that started to sort of rehash some of the same storylines over and over. That was something I noticed, each season kind of tends to be where like, oh, they're facing this huge threat and, they become depressed, but they kind of like rally together at the end and bring themselves together to overcome, whatever the threat is. You can only do that so many times. And I think they just about hit the wall with this season, but they also do a lot to make it feel special, I would say.
Yeah, a lot of closure at the end, a lot of great resolution.
Absolutely. And I would also say this is probably the most existential season of the 4, in that, thematically, it revolved around mortality, which was appropriate for a show in its final season. The stakes and threat of death felt more tangible because as an audience, we knew any one of our favorite characters could be killed off in the final episodes. And it turns out a couple of them were.
Did you cry?
I will reveal that later. I'm not ready to right now. I
my fucking eyes out, man. Oh, man. I was not even prepared for how this show ended. I was not even ready, but it got me so hard in the feels and I felt like I was ugly crying, which I don't do. Like, I wouldn't say I'm terribly sensitive when it comes to emotional filmmaking, but after spending 4 seasons with these characters and getting to know them inside and out and backwards and forwards, and the way the show said goodbye to the characters, I almost think wasn't fair. Like, they went so far pulling the heartstrings that I don't know if I'll ever recover from this final season.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely pulled on the heartstrings, but in a way that didn't feel manipulative, I felt.
Right. Oh, it was totally earned.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a masterclass on how to do a perfect resolution for your characters. I think your words are really well said, and I'm glad that I'm not the only one who cried, because yes, since you admitted it, I will admit that I did as well. You gotta be a machine, a robot man, not to, I feel like. Now, of course, regarding the theme of mortality, the Doom Patrol this season visited in the first episode the future and learned that they're all dead without learning how they died. So when they returned to the present, they were focused on preventing that future while also, over the course of the season, aging rapidly and having to deal with their bodies and minds failing them. As I get older, I find myself growing increasingly nervous about the aging process as my knee starts to not be a normal knee and just hurt for no reason. Just weird random stuff like that you don't even think about in your 20s. Aging is not a graceful process, and I think they kind of showed that in this show.
Yeah, I think long-standing fans of Dynamic Duel know that we started this podcast on our 30th birthday. We are now 37, and there is a world of difference, let me tell you, between 30 and 37.
Your body just basically wants to die.
Yeah, especially after a heavy night of drinking. But yeah, considering that throughout the entire series, we're dealing with characters that have lived over the span of decades and have never aged, I think the stakes were sufficient this last season when their longevity was taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Their whole superpower has essentially been longevity, or at least that was the main one that Nels Calder was sort of manipulating them for, created them for. So for that to be taken away from them definitely changed the dynamic of the show. And as good as this show is, and this season was, it was 12 episodes, which was probably 2 or 3 episodes too long, I feel. Past seasons have ranged from 9 to 15 episodes, and I feel like they never quite figured out the right amount of episodes to tell their story. Some seasons have felt way too short, blame COVID for that, but some have also felt like they dragged on, just to fill an episode quota.
Yeah, season 2 felt too short. Season 3 felt too long for sure. And I would say the first half of season 4 actually reminded me a lot of season 3. I was getting a little bit nervous that they weren't going to be able to stick the landing on this final season. But by the time the latter half of season 4 rolled around, I was like, okay, they really hit their stride in this season. And it's starting to remind me more of the better seasons 1 and 2.
I agree. There were some early episodes in the first half, like Dorothy Spinner's episode, that I thought was great, probably because I'm just a huge fan of Dorothy Spinner. But yeah, I would agree that once the show came back from its break, the pacing definitely improved.
Yeah, I don't care about Cyborg playing laser tag with his friends and all the dramatic bullshit that they're going through.
I agree. I think some of the episodes this season could have definitely been condensed into half episodes, if only to make room to explain events that happened off screen. I still don't know how Cliff and Jane got into Orquith, and also I would have liked them to have fleshed out more of Dorothy's story, because I really feel like we didn't get to say goodbye to her at all.
No, yeah, she just kind of disappeared after the Immortimus episode.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I would have liked to have said goodbye. Now, I may have felt differently about the episode count if there was a little more action this season overall. I think seasons 1 and 2 had a good amount of action, though season 3 and season 4 were kind of lacking that department. There weren't really any big standoffs, I guess is what I mean. Even at the end, when we finally saw Vic fire a laser and Jane transform into Silvertongue, that battle was interrupted by a bunch of singing butts. Which probably sounds good on paper, since the vibe of the show is more of a study of humanity than an action-packed superhero spectacle, as we've mentioned. And of course, that's what I like about it, but I'll admit the final battle felt fairly underwhelming in a way that, say, like Ezekiel the Cockroach versus a giant rat didn't.
Right. Well, I mean, the final battle was a cop-out, how they resolved that with essentially two major antagonist villains and threats of the season joining together and making friends and everything being okay. That's a huge letdown, but you don't really watch Doom Patrol for action.
True. Very true. You know, the show did a tremendous job of wrapping up the character story arcs and felt much more cathartic and satisfying than what we got from some other DC shows like Titans. But let's talk more about the characters and their character arcs in our character breakdown. Starting with Cliff Steele, aka Robot Man, who's played by Brendan Fraser and Riley Shanahan. Brendan Fraser does the voice, Riley Shanahan is actually the guy in the suit. The two of them together combined make the character of Cliff way more likable than the character has any right to be. Like, Cliff is a fairly frustrating character in that he reliably makes bad decisions, even though his heart may be in the right place. But the final scene was so incredibly moving and beautiful and satisfying in that Cliff finally got what he wanted, that I felt a profound sense of loss once the credits started rolling. Like, I was just sitting there in my bedroom, just like sad.
Devastated, right? Like, how dare this show just end with Cliff's eyes going dark, you know? That was the final shot. He got to see in that time crystal his grandson's entire life play out, and he was like, this is me coming home. And then he dies, and it's devastating. Like, I was emotionally wrecked. Like, how could they do that? I don't know if it has to do with the fact that I have a daughter now and just thinking about her becoming a grandparent down the line and everything like that, and how her life is going to play out, all the joys and sadness and everything. It just destroyed me.
I think things like that definitely hit harder since I've become a parent, although I've been a parent for a while, bit longer than you now. But no, I agree. I think that definitely contributes. You start to think a little bit more about mortality, a little bit more about legacy, a little bit more about your children's lives and how you could improve that and what you could do for them and things like that. You know, I think that was Cliff's whole arc this season. You say that you were devastated, but I want to make sure we were devastated in the best way. Like, we were sad, but it was a happy sad, like a heartwarming kind of sad.
My heart was warmed, but also shattered into tiny little bits.
That were warm, you know?
They were warm little bits. Yeah.
But no, his arc, you know, he lost his arm last season and he got a new one at the very beginning of this one, built for him by Vic and his father Silas, that had a sense of touch. Cliff created a hand puppet for himself using an oven mitt so that the first thing he would touch would be his grandson Rory. But with him still suffering from Parkinson's disease, he distracts himself throughout the season with other projects and tasks and the knowledge and fear that he's dying soon and desiring to leave some kind of legacy for his family before that happens. At a certain point this season, Cliff gets so depressed about his mental condition that he gets suicidal, which, you know, was sad. But by the end of the show, and like we mentioned, the final scene we see, the fact that he finally got his wish to be able to see his grandson grow up, and the fact that he's so at peace with that he just dies, I think is the perfect ending for Cliff.
Yeah, at first I thought it was a little bit tragic considering the characters got their youth back. They were restored to their former vitality, only for him to travel to Florida and realize that the Parkinson's is coming to claim him. I was like, that doesn't seem fair. Like, he was talking about how he thinks maybe he moved to Florida to die. But when it happens, it was beautiful. Cliff can sometimes get a little grating over the course of this show, but I felt largely that he avoided that this season. I think mainly because the amount of stupid decisions he made was kept to a minimum, even though he made some huge dumbass decisions like keeping the butt alive and stuff like that. But it came from a very touching place, I think. So when you can identify with Cliff's actions, he's endearing. When you don't identify with them, he is super annoying. And I feel like this season went with the former a lot more.
And, you know, even when he does make mistakes, more often than not, they're accidents, right? So, like, leaving the freezer door open was an accident. Breaking the chief's spine,
that was
an
crazy.
Accident. That was crazy.
I was not expecting that.
It happened so fast, and I was like, wait, what?
Poor Tim. First of all, I was so glad to see Timothy Dalton back in the role as the chief.
Right.
But to see the guy thrown into the corner of a bar was so freaking shocking. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
But then even after that, you know, Cliff made the correct decision in leaving him with his longevity. Even though he probably felt like that was another bad decision, it was also the right decision. So it's stuff like that where he makes up for some of the frustration associated with the character.
Yeah. In the end, like, kudos to the writers and to the performers for creating one of the most endearing yet frustrating, asshole yet teddy bear type character. Just a lot of conflicting emotions regarding him. Just a fantastic creation.
I would love it so much if this show won a couple Emmys. Like, it deserves it, you know? I don't know if it'll happen, but I would love it if it did.
At least for writing. Yeah, I think it would deserve it for sure.
Oh, and you know, some acting. And, you know, speaking of that, let's move on to Rita Farr / Elasti-Woman, played by April Bowlby. I've said it before, but April Bowlby deserves an Emmy for her performance. Maybe more so last season, but she is consistently amazing in a role where she has to perform as someone almost constantly performing.
Oh yeah, her performance is just a masterwork of technical acting. I'm surprised I don't see her more often in stuff,
right?
April Bowlby, because she just seems like a good enough actress to do almost anything. And I wonder if she's almost too good in this role. I hope she doesn't get typecast or anything, and that we see a lot more of her now that the show is over.
Yeah, she needs to be in movies, I feel like.
Yeah.
Now, after traveling back in time last season, Rita has lived the longest out of anyone else on the team and took it upon herself to lead the team, though early on this season, the team betrays her and chooses Laura to take Rita's place as leader. A majority of the conflict this season for Rita came from her relationship with Laura, who committed the ultimate act of betrayal last season in being responsible for the death of Malcolm, Rita's lover. Now, I'd say Rita's character took a step back from last season, and that she somewhat goes back to her self-centered diva personality. Ultimately, as she says herself, she wasn't right to lead the team in battle so much as lead them into lives beyond the Doom Patrol, because she cares about them. And in the final episode, after she herself dies, she disbands the Doom Patrol and is able to reunite with Malcolm in the afterlife, which I was really happy to see. I don't know if I like the funeral pyre scene because I felt it was somewhat disrespectful. But, you know, as Laura mentioned during that scene, like, there's nothing really beautiful about death.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of subverted the emotions that the viewer was feeling, seeing one of, you know, their beloved characters pass on. But it did it in the best way possible in the show's trademark humor. And really, you got further payoff later on that episode when you saw her reunite with Malcolm. So I don't begrudge him that great bit of comedy.
Yeah,
it was so good. For my money, it was the best gag in the whole show.
Definitely the best gag of the season, I would say, for sure. Moving on to Larry Traynor, aka Negative Man. He was played by Matt Bomer and Matthew Zuck. We can't really see their performance. We don't get any facial performances or anything like that. I would say, though, it's still a good performance and that it's still moving. Last season, Larry nurtured a giant cocoon that eventually hatched into an infant negative spirit entity named Keeg Bovo. After being forced to abandon his prior family, Larry became very protective over Keeg, who seemingly becomes angry with Larry after conversing with his future self in the first episode of the season and believing that he may be responsible for Larry's death. With Larry afraid that no one will be there to care for Keeg if he dies, things become more complicated when Mr. 104, aka Rama, enters the scene as a villain allied with Immortus to capture the team's longevity. Though Larry and Rama find a connection in that they're both dying and can't harm each other with their radiation, Larry rejects Rama after the promise that Immortus would grant their wishes proved to be a lie. By the end, however, Larry regains his longevity and, deciding that he is actually worthy of love, rescues Rama from the bottom of the ocean, and the two seemingly merge in space with Keeg, the three of them able to exist together as a ball of energy or like a miniature sun out in space. Larry has lived up to his name as Negative Man throughout the series, consistently being something of a downer. So it was nice to see that the writers found a way to give him a perfect ending, like the others, like no downside.
Yeah, after spending a lifetime of going through so much shit, it was nice to see all of these guys really get the ending that they deserved. Larry's no exception. And I thought it was really cool that he turned into a star, you know?
Yeah, very poetic. Moving on to Crazy Jane, aka Kay Chalice. She was played by Diane Guerrero. Normally, I'd be praising Diane's Emmy-worthy performance as not only Jane, but other alternate personas of the character. But we really didn't get to see any of that this season. And that's always sort of been like my favorite part of the performance that is Crazy Jane.
Well, we had the psychiatrist lady in the first couple of episodes, but yeah, that quickly went away.
Right.
At first, I thought Jane's arc here was going to be a healing journey from the incident that caused Jane to exist to begin with, which was sexual trauma when her boyfriend took her to an orgy and she had to defend herself. And so I thought it was going to be like this kind of sexual awakening into a relationship and finding her new purpose in that and kind of healing from the hurt that she felt previously. And it kind of went that route, but it really went about it in an awkward way with scenes of like masturbation that were kind of hard to watch.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be awkward too, though. Her arc this season was interesting in that Kay wanted her to find a purpose for herself outside of protecting Kay, because as we came to learn, Kay and the Underground were healing from the ancestral trauma that Kay had sustained as a child. But with Jane cut off from the Underground, she wasn't able to heal like the others, and was left to face the conflicts of the season alone, attempting to mature and age in a body she felt didn't really belong to her. And I think that's where sort of some of the awkwardness came from. But by the end of the season, Jane realizes that Kay's body was hers, that it belonged to all of the personas, as they also remembered the trauma they'd endured. And Jane was able to merge with the other personas to form one persona named Kaleidoscope, or K for short, and was, willing to risk romantic love once again. It was such a beautiful ending for the character, above and beyond what I thought was possible, though I did think her relationship with Casey felt a bit rushed.
Yeah, but, they seem like a good match for each other. Actually, you know what? They didn't really have any chemistry at all. But I like to believe that all of these characters kind of got their happy ending. So I'm choosing to believe that they were just meant to be.
I guess they did have the connection that they both felt like they weren't real people. So there's that. Moving on to Vic Stone, aka Cyborg. He was played by Joyvan Wade. I've honestly never really cared for this show's take on Cyborg, though I do think Joyvan gives a good performance as the character. But removing Cyborg's tech is probably the least interesting thing you could do with the character. And I think this season took a little too long in getting Vic to realize he should be Cyborg. Like you, I didn't care for the whole reuniting with old friends story arc. It just felt like an unnecessary subplot. But I guess having an old techie friend was a good way to introduce upgrades to the character. I just wish that friend was an established comic character, like William Magnus or something like that, That would have been exciting.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned in my review for the She-Hulk television series, it's not very interesting watching a superhero actively try not to be a superhero, especially when that superhero is badass,
Right, exactly. I do suppose that having Vic realize this dream of giving back to the community as a mentor figure was as satisfying a conclusion as the character could have had, though a more perfect ending, I think, would have been a cameo from the Titans show characters, or at the very least, Beast Boy. Just like the cameo that Cyborg had in the Titans show.
Yeah, I was expecting something like that. I was expecting that kind of crossover, but it never happened. And so it made the crossover in the Titans show feel even more pointless and empty.
Absolutely. Especially considering the fact that, this version of the Doom Patrol is an alternate version from the one that debuted in Titans, but now we know that Beast Boy can traverse the multiverse, so why not do it?
Right. Or instead of the Titans, maybe it would have been cool to see him graduate from the Doom Patrol into the Justice League. That would have been a cool ending for him too.
I guess I shouldn't say boom. Booyah. Moving on to the final character, Laura DeMille, aka Madame Rouge. She was played by Michelle Gomez. The women actresses in this show kill it. If you can't have Timothy Dalton's Niles Calder in the show, Michelle Gomez is a fantastic runner-up.
Yeah, she's fantastic at portraying the inner conflict of Madame Rouge.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Great character actor. You constantly know sort of like what emotion she's feeling. Just with her eyes and her facial features. It's fun to watch Michelle Gomez give the performance. Now, Laura had a bigger role this season than probably any other character on the team. In a way, I think she supplanted Rita as one of the show's 5 main leads. Not only was she the team's leader, giving her more agency than many others on the show, but she was put in positions such as facing off against Immortus first, or making others realize that they were in an alternate musical reality that gave her more screen time. She questioned whether she was good or bad as she continued to feel guilt over her past actions, and I'm still not quite sure how I feel about her conclusion, where she essentially tries to burn down the ant farm. Like, okay, that's kind of in keeping with the character, but was she successful, or did she go out in a blaze of glory and get killed in the process? We'll never know.
I like to think she was successful. She was good enough, I think, to bring that whole thing down, and the Brotherhood of Normalcy needed to be brought down. In the end, I think she kind of transformed into an anti-hero type character, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah. I'll take that. That's an acceptable answer.
She kind of found that happy medium for herself where she's doing moral good through amoral actions, like the Punisher or something like that. The Brotherhood of Normalcy and the Ant Farm is an evil organization. They do a lot of evil shit, and she will burn them all alive with a flamethrower if she has to. I think that's great. I think that makes sense for her.
Yeah, and that sounds really dangerous for the character, which is fantastic. I wish we could almost see her continue her journey.
It was at times frustrating seeing her struggle with her morality, like when she would often bail on the team to go drink vodka or something like that. It wasn't terribly exciting to watch, but I really chalked that up more to the season having too many episodes than anything really regarding the performance or the character.
I agree. I feel the same way 100%. But now that we've talked about each of the characters, let's get into our story highlights. Hey guys, Johnny DC here to remind you that this show is partnered with Cufflinks.com to save you money this season on your Marvel and DC men's accessories. You can get 20% off anything on the site when you use the code DUEL20, that's DUEL 20, at checkout. It's our little way of saving you some green while holiday shopping, and it's a great way for you to support this show. When you visit Cufflinks.com, be sure to also check out the other merch they offer, from Star Trek to the NFL. There's something there for every fan out there. I, for one, saved on their Superman Hidden Message Silver Tie Bar, which, as the name implies, has a secret message on the backside that says truth, justice, and the American way. The front has the iconic Superman logo, and it's my special way of showing off my fandom while remaining stylish and sophisticated. You can do that too for less, again, by visiting Cufflinks.com and using the code DUEL20 at checkout to get 20% off. Thanks, guys. Episode 1 was titled Doom Patrol. Rita Farr struggles to lead the Doom Patrol, now a superhero team, against a villain known as Codpiece. After the battle, Vic and Silas Stone successfully repair Cliff's robotic hand, granting him a sense of touch. Cliff proposes using the time machine to travel to his grandson Rory in Florida, but after colliding with Isabel Feathers, an amateur actress from their hometown of Cloverton, in the time stream, a malfunction sends them to the year 2042. They encounter an older version of Vic, who reveals that zombified werebutts have destroyed the world and that the other members of the Doom Patrol have died, except for Laura DeMille, who abandoned the team. While the Doom Patrol are distracted speaking with their spirits that now haunt Doom Manor, future Vic tries to use the time machine to travel back to the past and stop the Butt-pocalypse. The team manages to stop him and travel back in time just as they escape a horde of werebutt zombies. In the present, Jane becomes the dominant persona of her body once again, and Larry's new young energy spirit, Keeg, refuses to communicate with him. Meanwhile, Willoughby Kipling meets the Knights Templar and learns of a prophecy about the impending arrival of Immortus.
The fight against Codpiece was freaking hilarious. They find him disgusting to fight, but there's that part where Elastigirl has to point his gun away from the team, and so she has to grab his crotch weapon kind of thing and pull it away. I was dying of laughter. I was rolling.
I thought it was funny when Laura DeMille went up against him and her crotch laser is tiny and he's just staring at it for a while and he's like, "Are you trying to body shame me?"
It was such a good moment. Trying to clear up any time travel paradoxes or anything presented here, I guess I do have a question. in that the Doom Patrol actually didn't do anything to stop the butt apocalypse. It was the actions of that one scientist lady that taught the butts to like musicals, right? So why did the apocalypse happen in this future timeline? I guess the only difference was that this team crashed into Isabel Feathers while going through the time stream, and that created the Immortus paradox, wherein her villainy resulted in a kind of cancellation of the werebutt apocalypse, right?
Yeah, I think Isabel Feathers has everything to do with any kind of paradox. Her introduction to the timeline kind of threw everything for a loop.
I also really laughed when they crashed into Isabel Feathers in their time machine. And Madame Rouge was like, oh, God, she likes to watch people pee. That's right. It was such a throwaway thing in season 3 when Isabel Feathers fell into that hole. It was interesting that they brought that character back to be the main bad guy for this season. Yeah, it turned out to have quite the ramifications for this entire season.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The next episode was titled Butt Patrol, in which Rita attempts to lead the team in preventing the bleak future they witnessed, but the team rejects her leadership and makes Laura the new leader, to Rita's dismay. Laura and Cliff, suspecting Darren Jones, the former head of the ant farm, to be the cause of the zombie chaos, embark on a solo mission to find and stop him, while Jane and Vic pose as Bureau of Normalcy agents to contact the Butt Hunter, keeper of the last living zombie werebutt. At the manor, Keeg brushes off Larry while Rita confronts him for supporting Laura. Larry spills about Rita's leadership flaws and his desire for a good relationship with Keeg, while Laura and Cliff find Darren, now a zombie farmer, whom Cliff regretfully kills. The team reunites at the manor with Vic and Jane securing the last zombie werebutt, Frozen, which Cliff is tasked with destroying, though he's unable to bring himself to do so. Unbeknownst to everyone, one more werebutt lives in hiding with a former employee of the Bureau of Normalcy named Dr. Margaret Yu. Now I have to ask, was the Butt Hunter supposed to be like a twin brother of the Beard Hunter or something?
They didn't look similar, but they were both bizarre characters.
I just love that they exist. It's just freaking hilarious.
Maybe they could team up and fight crime together. Do you know if the Butts have any root in the source material?
I don't believe that they do, but I could totally be wrong. I haven't read all of the Doom Patrol comics, so maybe, but I don't think so.
The visual of them singing and dancing was just so bizarre. I think I mentioned this every time we review a season from the show, but just thinking about plopping someone randomly in the middle of one of these episodes and see them witnessing some of the strangeness that is within the show would be actually an enjoyable experience. Because they would be going, what the fuck?
No, honestly, legit, that is my wife who tends to pop in as I'm watching the show. I think it might be just a little bit too weird and absurd for the average viewer, but absolutely, when she sees stuff from the show, she's like, this is a really weird show. Moving on to episode 3, which was titled Nostalgia Patrol. Vic reconnects with his old pals, including his former best friend Derek, who calls out Vic for keeping his distance post-accident, though Derek gives Vic an old toy robot they built together for safekeeping. Rita receives an invite from a film festival showing the classic movies that she starred in, which she attends, only to get physically sucked into the world of her films. To help Laura make amends with Rita for taking over leadership of the team, the Doom Patrol attends Rita's screening, but also gets sucked into the movies, though Laura manages to escape. Within the movieverse, they meet Oliver Truman, who reveals that Dr. Yanis is attempting to drain Rita's emotions. The team finds Rita, but Truman, revealed to be a villain named Mr. 104, aka Rama, traps them on the set of the movie Spartacus 452. Yanis urges Rita to save her pals, siphoning emotions for Immortus. Keeg swoops in, rescuing the gang, but Rita goes unconscious before they are all teleported back to reality. This was probably my least favorite episode, though I would say that one of my favorite moments of the entire season was the scene where Cliff and Jane were in the horror film, and they're like, this isn't scary at all. And then they're like, oh, holy shit, when they saw the kid and were hiding in the closet from him.
I do like when the show kind of explores different genres in that way. literally taking us into an old romance movie, then an old horror film, then like a 1970s sci-fi film. That's always interesting to see. But yeah, the Vic stuff here really sapped the momentum of anything interesting that was happening. Also, my least favorite episode.
Honestly, if I was Vic and I was around like those crybaby friends, I'd be like, well, thought you guys were cool. Fuck you guys. And just walk out.
Yeah, same. I'm a goddamn superhero. I don't need this shit.
But also, like, I'm an adult.
Right.
Whatever. Next episode was titled Casey Patrol. Sometime after parting ways with the Doom Patrol, Dorothy has managed to reacquire her father Niles Calder's necklace, which was used to keep him immortal in order to conjure his spirit and reunite with him. While staying with Danny the Street and their residents, she distances herself from the rest of the community. One night, a swarm of cybernetic bugs invades the street, converting the residents into robots, minus Dorothy and Mara Lee. Dorothy realizes the robots are the same ones from her favorite comic book series, Space Case, and manages to materialize the heroine Space Case, aka Casey Brink. Dorothy and Casey explain to Mara Lee that the attack is orchestrated by Torminox, Casey's nemesis, who is also her father. The trio confronts Torminox in real life, but Casey hesitates to take him down, while he manages to capture Danny and defeat the Candlemaker easily. Later, Casey attempts to plead with Torminox, but he ignores her while demanding Dorothy's necklace. She hands it over while revealing that she had never reunited with Calder, and she was trying to distance herself from Danny and the others to not be reminded of him. After Torminox retreats with the necklace, Mara Lee gathers the community and implores them to embrace the real world when they are ready. Casey and Dorothy decide to go to Cloverton to find the author of the Space Case comic book. Unbeknownst to them, the author is working with Yanis and Torminox and preparing for Immortus' arrival, as the author tells Torminox that Immortus might help them live out their dreams.
Now, I didn't know that Space Case was going to be in this season at all. I remember you talking about her going into your Danny the Street backstory in their duel episode against Krakoa, the island. It was pretty cool to see that hero here.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. I was also surprised by the origin they gave her, and that Danny didn't bring her to life, but Dorothy did. I thought that made a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
I do love how Mara Lee kept misnaming Torminox. She was calling him like TurboTax and Tampax and stuff like that.
Yeah. That was funny.
That was good. How do you feel about Sabretooth being Torminox?
I didn't realize that until the end credits. He was covered in such heavy makeup and prosthetics, I didn't even recognize Tyler Mane.
Yeah, neither did I. I did like this episode again because I think I'm just a fan of Dorothy. So I'm glad she kind of got an episode all to herself, just so we could get like a recap of what she's been up to, even though, the recap we got at the beginning of the episode turned out to be a lie.
I was a little bit surprised that she ended up back on Danny the Street, considering that for the longest time she felt that living there was a prison.
True, right. I know she clearly felt that way back on him again, that she had just wound up in another prison. After spending time with the Dead Boy detectives, I'm surprised they didn't just have her go straight back to Doom Manor.
Right.
Moving on to the next episode, titled Youth Patrol, Larry attempts to track down Keeg and encounters Mr. 104, who has been forced to host Keeg in his body. Through Keeg, Larry learns that Mr. 104 was once a man named Rama, who was constantly being experimented on by the Bureau. As a result, Rama has joined forces with Yanis and pledged to Immortus, hoping to reverse his condition before it goes out of control and causes a mass extinction event. Larry pleads with Rama to find an alternative solution. Just as King returns to Larry's body, a dimensional portal sucks him in, and Rama follows in pursuit. At the manor, Kipling reveals to the Doom Patrol about Immortus, who is an ancient deity capable of eliminating reality. He also reveals that Calder once spoke of having a piece of Immortus, which he used as a catalyst for his necklace, as well as his experiments on Larry, Rita, Cliff, and Jane to retain their longevity. Rita wakes up and finds that she is aging, prompting her to look in Calder's office for a remedy. She breaks a vial containing a de-aging spell, which also affects the Doom Patrol and Kipling. The team set out to find Kipling's mentor to reverse the spell, but the team, driven by their youthful demeanor, decide to attend a pool party. Rita and Laura break off on their own and finally make amends after a tearful conversation. After talking to Jane about friendship, Vic decides to go and see Derek, though he turns into a child by the time he gets there. As the de-aging spell accelerates, Bunbury and the Knights Templar arrive at the party and turn Kipling back to normal, while Bunbury proceeds to extract Jane's longevity after she turns into a baby.
I thought this was a great concept for an episode. For some reasons, seeing superheroes de-aged into their kid forms is always a fascinating type of character study. Like with the X-Babies, that's what it reminds me of from the comic books. That was pretty interesting. But yeah, just another great way to explore these characters.
Of course, Cliff, ever the tragic character, gets his brain de-aged while his body is still a giant robot. But no, yeah, I thought it was interesting just hearing like the different things that they went through as teenagers and growing up and stuff like that. Particularly the character of Jane, because it was interesting that she never really had a childhood. That was all, Miranda's time, the former main dominant persona. So one thing I found interesting this episode as well was that this whole concept of Immortus as this like powerful deity. Of course, he's not that in the comics. General Immortus was the one responsible for the Chief's paralysis in the comics. He's just a bad guy, essentially, not an all-powerful being.
It just seemed more like the Marvel version of Immortus to me, who is a Time Lord variant of King the Conqueror. It's almost like the DC writers got confused with the Marvel character. I was kind of confounded by that the entire season.
I didn't even know Immortus was a character in Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
What a bunch of fucking copiers.
Dude, obviously this show ripped off that version of Immortus for this season. Like, what are they trying to do? It's blatant.
They probably didn't even know Immortus was a Marvel character like me.
Obviously, there are a bunch of Marvel fans that wrote for this show.
You don't know. You don't know things. Moving on to episode 6, titled Hope Patrol. After the de-aging spell is reversed, Cliff advises Jane to make the most of her remaining life instead of pursuing Immortus. She visits a member of the Sisterhood of Dada named Fogg, aka Sheely, and attempts to confess her feelings, but is conflicted between her desire to live for herself and her self-imposed duty to protect Kay. Larry is taken to the pocket dimension Orquith by the Scissormen, mindless drones with scissors for hands. Rama saves him and takes him back to the manor via a portal before Keeg intervenes and takes both of them back. Rita and Laura infiltrate the ant farm to learn more about the Immortus project, but find its records missing, having been borrowed by an inmate named Wally Sage, a metahuman who was labeled a weapon by Laura in the past, and also Malcolm's killer. They visit Wally's cell, but upon seeing Wally, Rita panics and transforms into a blob, seemingly killing Wally. Vic and Derek return to the manor and pursue Larry through the portal, while Cliff convinces Jane to continue their fight against Immortus. An injured Kipling arrives, informing the two of them that Bunbury was killed by Immortus's agents, who took Jane's longevity, but they ignore his warning. Keeg reveals to Larry his vision of the future, where he was forced to kill the latter to protect the universe. Believing that Immortus can allow the two of them to stay together, Larry allows his longevity to be extracted. Meanwhile, Vic, Derek, Cliff, and Jane are captured by the Scissormen while they are greeted by Wally and two other Immortus agents. Cliff realizes that he didn't close the freezer all the way, causing the werebutts to thaw and get loose. Now, there's quite a few questions that this particular episode brings up, like the Fog, aka Sheely. I don't understand how she made that connection with Jane. Like, all of a sudden, a door in Jane's room leads to the Fog.
Yeah, and how did she end up in Jane's puzzle?
Yeah, in that earlier episode. And why did she do that to Jane? That was weird.
And who did Elasti-Woman crush in that cell if it wasn't Wally?
Oh, that turned out just to be a creation of Wally. A false construct of him.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't learn that until later episodes. But also, we never learn how Cliff and Jane get into Orquith.
Yeah, you have to kind of just assume that maybe Flit took him there or something.
No idea. And they even mention it in a later episode, how like they don't know how they got there. It's just like a throwaway line. But the fact that they called it out, they should have realized that they probably should have explained how that happened.
Yeah, Laura and Rita had to build their own portal generator using the notes that they got from Wally's cell in order to even get to Orquith, which seemed pretty complicated, you know?
Exactly. Should not have been easy, right? I did like the fact that they introduced the Scissorman in this episode, even though I think it's a terrible adaptation of the Scissorman. Like in the Doom Patrol comics, the Scissormen are very, very dangerous characters. They could literally like cut you out of the comic page and then you just cease to exist. They're very different in the show.
I did like how Vic's friend was able to conjure up weapons just by drawing them and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was cool. Again, would have been cooler if it was William Magnus. So that last episode was where things ended with the mid-season hiatus that turned out to be almost a whole freaking year. So episode 7, entitled Orquith Patrol, was where people started to get to watch the show again. Rita and Laura escape the ant farm with Wally's drawings, though the former becomes depressed, believing that she had committed murder. Laura later convinces her to help her build a gateway to Orquith to help the others. In Orquith, the group manages to escape captivity. Vic and Derek split from the group to find Larry, while Jane and Cliff go to find Wally. They encounter Wally, who shows Cliff a vision of a potential future where he could be happy with Clara and Rory, prompting Cliff to cave and willfully surrender his longevity. As Sage, Torminox, and Dr. Yanis finish their ritual, Rita and Laura reunite with the group, and they are also joined by Dorothy and Casey. As the ritual finishes, Rita is shocked to find that they have summoned Isabel Feathers, her theater rival, who was pushed into a time hole by Laura when she initially arrived in the present day. With Immortus possessing her, Isabel kills Sage, Torminox, and Dr. Yanis, and unleashes a scream that destroys the Orquith dimension. I was so pissed off at Robot Man when he caved and let them take his longevity.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Like, he knew he was being manipulated, and he still went with it. I don't know if it's a result of his brain deteriorating, but I just hated it. The next episode was titled Fame Patrol. The gang wakes up and finds themselves in the real world and follows a confused Isabel, who is discovered by a local driving by. Isabel later gets on TV and talks about her return to the audiences of Cloverton. Believing Immortus to have been a lie, the group returns to dealing with their personal problems while also accepting their mortality. Larry is contacted by a disembodied Rama and helps him reassemble himself with Keeg's power. Cliff panics as he attempts to find the zombie butt he didn't kill, while also struggling with his Parkinson's condition as Dorothy attempts to help him. Casey tries to be a friend to Jane, who is lost in her own mind and unable to reach the underground, and offer counsel only to be rejected. The group later decides to attend a parade celebrating Isabel's return. Upon arrival, the townsfolk hails them as heroes, much to Isabel's chagrin. Meanwhile, Laura notices that Isabel has been rewinding time to manipulate reality in her favor, and only she is able to notice. When Isabel finds out from Mayor Claire Delaire that the parade is intended to celebrate the Doom Patrol finding Isabel, she snaps and unleashes another scream. Now, it's never explained why Madame Rouge is the only one able to see how Immortus is manipulating time. I don't know why.
Well, yeah, and same goes for the next episode, how she was able to snap out of the false reality, too. There was something going on there, I guess, where maybe because she didn't have her longevity taken or something like that. I have no idea how to rationalize it.
But again, it was like one of those things that made Laura almost feel like she was the main character of the show.
Yeah.
I actually thought the scene where Isabel rewinds time for that first time was pretty frightening. Like, that was scary.
Yeah.
Straight from a horror film. The next episode was titled Immortimus Patrol. Isabel puts the Doom Patrol, Dorothy, Casey, and Rama in an illusion of a perfect world where they live out a holiday in honor of her, named Immortimus Day, and constantly break into musical numbers with help from corporeal versions of the sex ghosts. During a number, Laura's old memory is triggered, breaking her out of Isabel's spell. She helps the others regain their memories, though some of them remain uncertain whether they wish to remain in Isabel's perfect world. Later, Isabel visits Doom Manor and attends the Doom Patrol's dinner, but the group renounces her illusion, leaving her distraught. Isabel returns the group to their normal state while taunting that they are doomed. Again, also terrifying. Not much happens in this episode because, they're all stuck in an alternate reality, but I did enjoy the heck out of this episode.
Yeah, I didn't know there was going to be a musical episode this season. It's funny watching these actors like sing and dance because I feel like it gives somewhat of an insight into the theater kids that a lot of them probably were during their school days.
Right. Yeah, Joyvin, definitely a theater kid.
Yeah, Diane Guerrero.
Yeah, Abigail Shapiro, the actress who plays Dorothy as well. Brendan Fraser, definitely not a theater kid.
Yeah.
And same, I would say, with Michelle Gomez.
Michelle Gomez can't really sing. That was a little bit painful, but I think it's supposed to be funny. Yeah.
Out of all of them, I would definitely say that Vic killed it. My favorite scene, though, was like as Vic was like doing his song and dance number, all of a sudden, like P started landing next to him. And Brendan Fraser as Cliff was just like, oh, I'm just trying to feel my dick in the wind while I still can.
And then Madame Rouge opens up the door. She's like, what are you doing? He's like, singing. And then that final shot with Negative Man coming into frame down below. He's like, you okay up there?
Yeah, that was great. I also really liked the confrontation at the dinner table between all of them. That was a really interesting scene, I felt. The following episode was titled Tomb Patrol. After seemingly killing the last werebutt, the butt hunter encounters a werebutt named Teddy, who tasks him with a mission. Vic meets with Silas at Star Labs and asks to be upgraded into Cyborg again. Isabel invites the Doom Patrol to her one-person play in Cloverton, while Laura learns that Isabel's source of power, the group's longevity, resides in a skin tag behind her neck. She proposes to the others that they should attend Isabel's play in an attempt to recover their longevity, but they refuse out of fear and wish to spend their remaining lifespan in peace. Meanwhile, Dr. Yu returns home and informs the werebutt Nicholas of Teddy's plan to start a war with humankind, while also revealing that she had been turned into a werebutt. Laura attends Isabel's play alone, where the latter is ridiculed by the audience, causing her to snap and make them disappear. Laura talks to Isabel and convinces her that not everyone will love her the way she wants. Isabel, however, believes that she should pursue the path of villainy and gain love through fear. While reminiscing their past adventures, Rita realizes that Laura has gone off on her own and tells the team to help her. She then collapses and falls unconscious, leaving Larry, Jane, and Cliff to go to town and help Laura. As they arrive at the theater, they are surrounded by Teddy and the werebutt horde, but an upgraded Vic returns to assist them. The team runs inside the theater, where Isabel sends them and Laura through a time portal.
These last 3 episodes were fantastic. I really felt like they were paced well, and the story really dove into high gear leading up to its conclusion.
I did think it was pretty gross that Niles' necklace that he wore was a petrified skin tag that was on the back of Isabel's neck. Like, I'm trying to think of how that happened. Like, she was falling through the time stream and the skin tag must have like fallen off in time, I guess, and Niles, managed to get his hands on it. It's just like this weird paradox, I guess, of how Niles got his longevity from Immortus, and yet Immortus needed that piece of himself from the Doom Patrol members to return to time, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of like a chicken egg situation.
Right, exactly. Episode 11 was titled Portal Patrol. In the time stream, Keeg manages to detect 3 time portals leading to different longevity skin tags. The team splits up and enters each portal while Vic stays behind to resummon them when needed. Laura enters the ant farm in 1949, where she attempts to steal Calder's necklace, but encounters her younger self. After getting caught, Laura attempts to convince 1949 Laura to give up her work at the Bureau, but fails. Laura beats up her younger self relentlessly until Vic recalls her. Jane and Larry enter Doom Manor in 1996, where the former encounters Calder and receives counsel from him. After revealing that the other personas are gone, Jane is convinced by Calder to admit the truth, that she and the other personas were born after Kay was raped by her father. Upon acknowledging her trauma, Jane is reunited with the other personas as they all ride Driver 8's train out of the underground and to the location that Kay was building as they see kaleidoscope images outside the window of Driver 8's train. Larry encounters the negative spirit, who controls 1996 Larry's body to talk to him and Keeg. The spirit assures Larry that he and Keeg would be fine in the future before he is recalled. Cliff visits Paraguay in 1948 and finds Calder and Kipling in a bar. They briefly fight Nazi soldiers sent to kill Calder, but Cliff accidentally breaks Calder's spine on the counter, causing his legs to be paralyzed. Ridden with guilt, as well as Kipling stating that Calder will die if the necklace is taken, Cliff decides not to take the necklace. In the time stream, Vic sends a distress signal which reaches Derek in the future, who helps him locate a time portal to return to the present day with help from his students and a future Vic. After the group reunites, Jane, in a combined persona called Kaleidoscope, does a pep talk as they collectively agree to return to fight Isabel and the Werebutt Horde.
What was the more shocking paralysis scene? Niles Calder in this episode getting slammed against the bar, or Professor Xavier in X-Men First Class?
Oh, geez. I actually think the Robot Man one was better because I kind of felt like the First Class one felt just so random, just like a stray bullet for Magneto tagged Professor X. And it's like, oh, that's now he's paralyzed. But with this one, I think it was a little bit more, not only humorous in a way, but Robot Man was definitely more guilt-stricken than Magneto was.
That doesn't mean it was Magneto more shocking.
And it was more.
The correct answer was Professor X in X-Men First Class. Clearly a better scene.
Anything between Doom Patrol and X-Men, Doom Patrol wins. Sorry.
Okay.
The final episode was titled Dun Patrol. The Doom Patrol prepares for their last stand against Isabel and the Werebutt Horde, but Dr. Yu and Nicholas arrive and start to sing, prompting the Werebutts to sing along. Annoyed by the butts, Isabel starts singing, causing the time portal to become unstable and engulf the entire theater. The Doom Patrol returns to their home to celebrate, but Isabel returns an hour later, having spent 1,000 years in the time stream where the Werebutts were helpful in her tour throughout time. She offers the team toenails, which grant them longevity. Rita, however, passes away from old age, and her ghost requests the team to disband and cremate her body. Afterward, each member goes their separate ways. Cliff returns to Florida to reunite with Clara and Rory. Larry and Keeg find Rama and take him to space, where they spend their last moments together before Rama's energy explodes. Jane goes to space with Casey and affirms her feelings, and Laura returns to the ant farm and murders every employee with a flamethrower. In the afterlife, Rita reunites with Malcolm. At Clara's home, while helping Clara with the car, Cliff's arm freezes up, and he sees a vision of Rory's future in the gift Immortus gave him, where he goes through similar experiences as he did. Feeling satisfied, Cliff's body finally shuts down.
A great final episode. For my money, it's actually better than the final episode of Loki Season 2, which I thought was fantastic. If every episode of this season was as good as episode 12 of Doom Patrol, it would be a perfect 5-star show because it was so satisfying, so well done, so well written, so well acted. It was perfection.
I don't know if this last episode was perfect. Again, at the beginning, the final battle was kind of Deus Ex Machina in a way. Mm-hmm. But I would say, yeah, definitely the conclusion to all of the characters' arcs was above and beyond what I would have imagined for the characters and immensely satisfying.
At first, my impression was that there were too many endings. It was starting to feel kind of like Return of the King, just ending after ending after ending. Like when I thought the show was over, I realized I was only halfway through the episode. So I was like, what the hell do they have left to do? I'm so glad they took the time to really go through each character's resolution, though.
Yeah.
They didn't just cop out by having the show end when Larry turned off Rita's movie or something like that. They really explored many different epilogues of the Doom Patrol, and my initial impatience grew into gratitude at getting to see where they went.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It made the entire season, and honestly, it kind of made the entire series, because the fact that we got to be with these characters over the course of 4 seasons, through their different arcs, through their different trials and tribulations, and just be with them as they finally attain peace, was one of the most magical and beautiful things I've ever seen on television.
It was incredibly cathartic.
It made all 4 seasons absolutely worth it. I mean, they were already great, but it just brought it up an entire notch in my book. That all said, I don't think this season was as strong as maybe like the first 2 seasons. I think there was a slight dip after COVID. So it It was great, not perfect, and ultimately, the show's existential, mortality-focused final season culminated in a satisfying conclusion to this absurdist, humorous, and often emotionally profound series. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars, a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I would also give this season 4 stars out of 5. It just lagged a little bit in the middle episodes, and I was almost about ready to give this season like 3 or 3.5 stars. But those final 3-4 episodes were just so incredible, so amazing that it rose up the quality of this entire season.
I'd like to give it a higher rating, honestly, because by the time the show ended, and even now, I still look back on it with fond feelings. But, just as I was writing the review, I realized all the different balls that they had dropped. Small balls, which sounds weird to say. But things, like Dorothy's conclusion, just some plot holes that popped up in different episodes, and some unnecessary subplots just prevent it from being as good as it could have been. But it's still really damn good.
I think if this season was 6 episodes, like Loki season 2 was, like the Disney Plus television shows typically are, it would have been a near perfect season.
I don't know. It's a lot to fit in 6 episodes. Maybe 9 episodes. I could see that.
Yeah, I can see that too. But that does it for this review, guys. Let us know what you thought about Doom Patrol Season 4 by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Instagram or X. I want to know if there's anybody out there that saw the last episode of Season 4 and didn't cry, because it would just be mind-blowing to me.
It is, yeah, that would be a tremendous act of will.
Yeah.
You had to be like pinching yourself and be like, don't you cry, just to make it through it.
You can find links to all of our accounts by checking out our show notes or visiting our website at dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you could also find a link to our Patreon page, where you could join our Dynamic 2.0 tier and chat with us and fellow listeners, our Fantastic 4 tier, which gets you bonus content each month, our X-Force tier that makes you an executive producer of this podcast, or our newest tier that lets you join our Dynamike podcast network. If you can't join Patreon, you can still support the show by signing up for our e-newsletter, also at dynamicduel.com, so you'll never miss an episode.
Please, guys, don't forget to visit our website and leave a donation for Pop Culture Classroom, which will get you a digital poster of our upcoming charity duel episode in a few weeks, Alfred Pennyworth versus Edwin Jarvis.
In our next episode, we will be reviewing the Amazon Prime holiday film, Merry Little Batman. I actually had a chance to see an early screening of this with my family in the movie theater, and it was good times. It was really fun, really cute. Definitely check it out if you have Amazon Prime and listen to our review.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it when it comes out December 8th. But that does it for this episode, guys. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson,
John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Brandon Estergard,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Nick Abanto,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Scott Camacho,
Adam Speas,
and Andrew Schunk for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Up and away.
True believers.
What the fuck?